My name is Michael Turner, and if you are listening to this now, it is because God allowed me to return to tell the truth I hid for decades. Not the distorted version I created to justify my choices, but the raw truth. The truth I always tried to bury beneath violence, pride, and fear. For a long time, I convinced myself that I was stronger than everyone, that nothing could stop me. Today, looking back, I realize I was only running away from myself. I was the leader of a faction, not by chance, not for lack of opportunity, but because I chose that path. I liked the power. I liked seeing people lower their heads when I passed by. I liked the feeling of controlling territories, businesses, and lives. I liked believing that I was someone the world couldn't ignore. But what nobody saw, and what I myself refused to admit, was that inside, I was completely broken. The scars I carried on my soul pushed everything human away from me. The pain I experienced as a young man became armor, and the armor became arrogance, and arrogance became destruction. With every order I gave, every threat I made, every life lost because of my command, a part of me died along with it. But I ignored all the signs. I didn't want to feel anything, because feeling required courage, and I was afraid to look at what I had become. Over time, I began to believe I was invincible, that death had no power over me, that I could live eternally surrounded by weapons, money, and men, ready to do my bidding. I laughed at the idea of judgment, of destiny, of consequences. I thought that world was all that existed, but the truth is, nobody runs away forever, and my downfall began long before the day I died. And you need to understand the beginning to comprehend what came after. I know this story has already spoken to you in some way. Before continuing, please subscribe to the channel and leave a like. This helps me keep alive this mission of sharing stories that confront, awaken, and reveal truths that many people try to ignore. Stay with me because what comes next will open your eyes in a way you may never have imagined. When I think about how my life unfolded within the world of crime, I realize that everything I called glory was nothing more than a mirage built upon wounds I never had the courage to face. In the beginning, each step I took towards power seemed almost triumphant, as if I had finally found a place where no one could hurt me again. The streets, the alleys, the silent codes, and the hidden alliances became the environment that shaped my days, and I began to believe that this dark universe was the only reality capable of making me feel alive. The money arrived before I even realized the emptiness it left behind, and the way people feared me fueled a deep illusion of respect, when in reality it was all just forced submission. I clearly remember how intoxicating it was to see my influence spreading through the city, as if every corner carried an invisible mark of who I was. The cars that escorted me, the weapons I brandished, the whispered conversations when I appeared. All of this created an atmosphere that made me believe I ruled a small kingdom hidden from the common world. But inside me, something screamed for help, although I didn't know how to interpret that silent discomfort. Perhaps it was my conscience trying to survive. Perhaps it was just the voice of someone I ceased to be long ago. But I learned to silence it, because listening to it would mean admitting that my entire life was built on a lie. The truth is that crime has an extremely skillful way of camouflaging itself as a refuge for broken people. It offers quick answers to deep pain, empty promises for shattered dreams, and a momentary sense of control for those who have always been afraid of being weak. And I, lost within my own scars, accepted all of this as if it were the only possible alternative. However, the more I grew in that world, the more I realized that there was an invisible limit approaching, something I didn't understand, but that was already moving in my direction. And that limit began to reveal itself on the day I committed my first unforgivable act. The memory of the moment that changed everything forever still burns within me like a scar that no time can erase. I was only 17, but I already carried within my chest a mixture of anger, wounded pride, and a desperate need to prove something I didn't even understand. It was on a sweltering night, on a narrow street lit only by a flickering lamppost, that I was challenged for the first time in a way that touched my deepest pride. And I, guided by blind impulsiveness, let the darkness take control of my hands. The weapon they placed before me was cold, heavy, and almost hypnotic, as if it carried a silent promise of immediate power. And at that moment I thought of nothing but the fear of appearing weak before those who expected me to prove my worth. When I pulled the trigger, the bang echoed through my entire body like an internal explosion that irreversibly pierced me. The first feeling I had wasn't regret, nor compassion, nor even shock. It was a strange sensation of strength, as if I had crossed a boundary that from that moment on would place me above everything and everyone. However, soon after, something I couldn't identify at the time opened up inside me, like a silent hole that swallowed the little humanity that still remained. I expected to feel guilt, but all I found was a growing emptiness, and this emptiness became, without my realizing it, the greatest danger to my soul. From that moment on, every moral boundary that had previously seemed insurmountable began to recede further and further, as if a dark fog shrouded my conscience, rendering me incapable of recognizing the gravity of what I had done. It was then that I realized, even without understanding, that something spiritual was moving around me, something observing me as I took my first step into a place from which I would not easily escape. And it was precisely this silent emptiness that led me to an indifference that would change everything I would become. After that first shot, something within me shifted in a way that was almost imperceptible at first, but which would soon become the center of everything I would do. The feeling of emptiness that had arisen after that initial act began to expand like a silent shadow, occupying every space where some vestige of humanity had previously existed. I began to walk the streets with the impression that my heart was beating at a different frequency, as if it were becoming more distant from everything that had once made me human. Each new order I gave, each new threat I uttered, and each life lost because of me joined together in the same dark hole that grew inside me without me having the courage to face it. Over time, this void became a distorted refuge. It was easier to hide my pain inside than to face the suffering I caused daily. I learned to detach myself emotionally, as if the act of feeling were a kind of weakness that I couldn't allow to show in my leadership role. With each frightened face that crossed my path, with each plea for mercy that I ignored, and with each consequence of my actions that I saw from a distance, something inside me broke. But I, unable to cope with this rupture, hardened even more on the outside, building a shell that completely isolated me from that which made me human. Indifference took hold of me so deeply that I began to see the pain of others as just another detail of my daily life, as if the lives of those around me had lost all real value. I moved on like someone who had completely forgotten the meaning of empathy, and this loss became the greatest spiritual poison that consumed my soul. The normalization of evil became so pervasive that I could no longer distinguish any boundary between what was right and what was absolute destruction. And this emotional blindness continued to grow until the day death came to collect what I believed I had buried forever. That night began like so many others, marked by silent tensions and a heavy atmosphere I was already used to breathing. But there was something different in the air, something my body seemed to perceive even before my mind could formulate any conscious thought. I walked with the uneasy feeling of being watched by invisible eyes, as if the darkness itself had become a silent witness to my steps. At the same time, a deep unease accompanied me, a premonition I ignored because I believed nothing could truly harm me. I felt protected by armed men, by reputations built over the years, and by a boldness bordering on absolute arrogance. When the first shots rang out, my instincts kicked in before any reasoning, leading me to seek cover as chaos spread around me. The noise was deafening, as if each shot came with a warning I had long refused to heed. I saw my men running, shouting almost inaudible commands, and yet amidst that tumult, something inside me remained absolutely still, as if awaiting a silent verdict that would finally be revealed. It was at that moment that I felt the impact on my chest, a profound shock unlike any pain I had ever experienced before, a warm sensation that spread rapidly as my body lost strength. I tried to breathe, but the air seemed to slip through my hands, as if life itself were slipping away from me without looking back. My knees buckled, and my vision began to blur in a way that made time seem to fold back on itself, slowing everything down as if God were allowing me to watch my own fall with full awareness. As I fell, I realized that this was not just the end of a life, but the collapse of an entire structure built on misguided choices, senseless pride, and decisions that hurt people who would never forget my name. And it was precisely the moment my eyes closed that something completely unexpected began to happen. The moment my eyes finally closed didn't bring the absolute darkness I'd always imagined accompanied death, but rather a strange feeling of lightness that seemed to detach every part of my being from something I'd previously believed to be essential. Instead of falling into the void, I perceived a kind of silence so profound it almost seemed to have form. A silence that didn't hurt, but forced me to acknowledge that something incomprehensible was happening. Gradually, I felt my body falling behind, as if I were being pulled by an invisible force that ignored any human resistance. And then, in a revelation that left me completely breathless, I found myself standing. The sight of my own body lying on the ground, motionless, bloodied, and surrounded by screams and confusion, had an impact on me that no dangerous situation, no territorial war, no confrontation had ever been able to cause. It was like observing an empty shell, a lifeless structure that no longer had any connection with what I was feeling at that moment. It was there that I understood, brutally and definitively, that what I had always considered me was not what lay on the ground, but this consciousness that now floated between a world I knew and another that seemed to call to me irresistibly. As I tried to comprehend this impossible phenomenon, I realized I couldn't speak. I couldn't touch anything around me, and I couldn't call for help either, because my voice, if I still had one, couldn't find anywhere to echo. Despair began to take shape within me because even though I was conscious, I no longer had control over what was happening. It was as if the line separating the physical from the spiritual had abruptly broken, revealing a reality I never imagined facing. And just as that realization began to solidify within me, an indescribable presence began to approach, bringing with it a light I couldn't comprehend. And that would change everything I believed about what exists after death. As that light drew closer, I realized it wasn't just brightness, but something carrying an indescribable weight, as if every particle of it possessed consciousness, intention, and authority. It wasn't a blinding light, but a revealing light, and the closer it came to me, the more I felt parts of myself shedding everything I had built to hide who I truly was. The presence that emerged from that luminosity didn't need to announce its name, because the very essence emanating from it proclaimed that there stood someone before whom no human being can maintain masks. I knew immediately, without a shadow of a doubt, that I was standing before Jesus. The feeling that overwhelmed me was not one of comfort, but of a confrontation so profound it seemed to pierce my soul like a blade of pure truth. Jesus did not look at me with hatred. There was no explicit condemnation on his face, but there was something even more terrifying. There was holiness. And it was this holiness that made me perceive with devastating clarity every shadow I had carried within me throughout my life. I tried to look away, but it was impossible to hide any thought, because before him, everything I had done, everything I had become, and everything I had tried to justify with my pride was revealed as it truly was. I didn't need to hear words to understand that I was being judged. The judgment didn't come from his voice, but from my own conscience, which was finally awakening, as if it had been asleep for years under layers of insensitivity, violence, and self-deception. The presence of Jesus illuminated every decision I made, every life I destroyed, every tear I caused, and every choice I made believing I would never be accountable to anyone. And in that instant, I understood that no power, no dominion, no respect gained through fear had any value before the divine justice he represented. The intensity of that encounter enveloped me so completely that I began to feel something I had never felt in my lifetime, the awareness of the fate of those who chose to walk in darkness. And this revelation would be even more terrifying and transformative than anything I had ever faced before. When the presence of Jesus completely enveloped me, I felt as if the space around me had been torn open from the inside out, revealing before me a dimension that did not follow the same rules as the world I knew. There was no ground, no horizon, no direction. There was only a kind of spiritual reality that seemed to pulsate according to the truth of every decision I had made throughout my entire existence. Jesus didn't need to point, explain, or command anything, because what was revealed before my eyes sprang forth as a direct consequence of the choices I made, choices I never believed would continue beyond death. Before me arose something I cannot simply call torment, but full awareness. I saw faces, not symbolically or distantly, but with the painful clarity of someone reliving every second of their own actions. They were the faces of people I hurt, people I frightened, families I destroyed, young people I influenced to enter the path that swallowed me whole, mothers who wept for their children because of me, children who grew up carrying traumas born from a single decision of mine. Each face carried not only suffering but the continuation of the pain I had caused, as if the echo of my choices had spread through generations that did not yet exist. Jesus showed me that the evil we commit doesn't die the moment we do it. It multiplies, infiltrates other lives, and creates roots that extend far beyond the instant we pull a trigger or utter a threat. And it was precisely this awareness, this devastating understanding, that made me realize where I was headed. Not a physical place of flames and screams, but a state of mind where a person is forced to eternally face the weight of what they have become. It was then that I understood that the torment reserved for those who spread fear is not imposed by God, but built by each individual piece by piece until their own soul becomes a prisoner of their own choices. And when that truth finally hit me completely, something unexpected happened, something that would completely change the destiny I believed to be inevitable. When that revelation finally closed before me, I felt as if my own being was about to crumble under the weight of all that I had witnessed. Shame, guilt, and spiritual pain enveloped me so deeply that I couldn't even imagine that any form of mercy could still reach someone as scarred by shadows as I was. However, in the instant when my spirit seemed to sink into the bitter awareness of my choices, something surprising happened. The light that came from Jesus, that same light that confronted me with the truth, began to transform into something I never expected to feel again. Something I believed was lost forever. Compassion. Jesus extended his hand, not to absolve me of everything I had done, but to show me that a man's story can still be given new meaning when he allows his soul to be broken and rebuilt by the truth. There were no words, no promises, no spiritual bargains. There was only a silent gesture that said that an awakened conscience is in itself the beginning of a new path. And in that gesture, I felt the opportunity to start over, not as someone innocent, but as someone called to face his own ruins with responsibility and true repentance. The next sensation was one of falling, as if I were being pulled back into a world I thought I had left behind. The distant sound of machines, confused voices, and intense lights began to fill the void around me. When I finally opened my eyes in the hospital, my chest burned, my breath was short, and my body felt like it had fought an entire war. Tears came even before I fully understood what had happened because, for the first time in decades, I felt something that crime had ripped from me: vulnerability. As soon as I could speak, I asked to see people I never imagined. I'd have the courage to face relatives of some of those I had destroyed. I knew I couldn't undo the past, but I could bear its weight. Each request for forgiveness was a wound that reopened, but also a part of my soul that finally began to heal. And as this transformation unfolded, I understood that my story wouldn't end there, because there was something even more important that I needed to tell the world. When I finally began to understand the extent of what I had been shown, I realized that my second chance was not only to rebuild what remained of my own story, but to warn those who still walk the same road I once traveled, believing myself invincible. It wasn't easy to admit that my entire life was built on foundations of pain, pride, and self-sufficiency. But today I understand that this testimony no longer belongs only to me. It exists to reach people who carry hidden wounds, dangerous impulses, or choices that seem small, but can open spiritual doors that should never be unlocked. By sharing everything I have lived through, I do so not to be admired, absolved, or seen as someone completely transformed, but so that others do not have to reach the brink of death to see the gravity of what one becomes when embracing darkness as a guide. My voice today carries the weight of a past I can never erase, but it also carries the responsibility of a truth I can no longer silence. As time went by, I realized that no one goes through life without leaving traces, because every choice deposits something in the invisible, every attitude silently shapes the future, and every thought nourishes what will grow within us when we least expect it. I understood, in the face of eternity itself, that human beings tend to believe they can manipulate spiritual demands, as if the soul functioned in the same way as earthly agreements, where emotional justifications or well-rehearsed speeches can soften the responsibility. However, I learned that nothing remains hidden from God, because He sees beyond the surface, beyond the mask, beyond the edited version we tell others and even ourselves. He sees what we try to hide, what we pretend not to feel, what we say doesn't matter, when in fact, it is determining the course of our own eternity. This revelation also made me understand that God does not rejoice in anyone's downfall, and that spiritual discipline is not arbitrary punishment, but a natural consequence of the seeds we plant while walking unconsciously. I learned from Jesus that the harvest is inevitable, and that every harsh word, every act of violence, every choice motivated by hatred or arrogance becomes something real in the spiritual world, even if here it seems only a momentary reaction. There is no room for lies, manipulation, or excuses, because everything we build is revealed with a clarity that is almost painful. Therefore, with all the weight of my history and all the pain of the revelations I have witnessed, I ask you to examine your life, your attitudes, your resentments, your secrets, and your hidden paths, remembering that what seems insignificant today can become a spiritual prison tomorrow. When we neglect our own soul, we are slowly placing ourselves on the path of what we believe we will never face. For a long time, I ignored signs that are now as visible as a flash of light. The restlessness I suppressed was a warning. The emptiness I violently filled was a cry, and the pain I caused others was a reflection of my own destruction. All of this accumulated silently within me while I pretended nothing was happening. And it is precisely because I recognize this same dynamic emerging in the lives of so many people that I offer this warning. Do not wait for death to knock on your door to reveal what you had several opportunities to correct while there was still time. God offers paths of restoration, but He does not force anyone to walk them. The choice will always be ours, and it is this choice that will decide what we find when the last door opens. If you are listening to this testimony, do not ignore the call that God is making to your heart at this moment. Allow yourself to make the choice that I took too long to make, the choice of light, truth, and redemption before it is too late. Returning to life showed me that God never gives up on us, but it also showed me that He will not prevent us from reaping what we sow if we insist on remaining where we shouldn't be. Mercy is available, but repentance must be born from within. If this video resonated with you, subscribe to the channel now. Leave a comment saying, "I choose the light," and allow this message to reach other lives that urgently need to hear it too.